Hello, my name's Elijah Wells and today's review is the Douglas Wilson's new movie, Paddington in Peru. Taking place only a couple years after the events of the second film, Paddington is now officially the British citizen. So, shortly after finding out about his citizenship, he gets a very strange letter from Aunt Lucy from the home of retired bears in Peru. So, the Brown family and Paddington all go to Peru to, of course, check up on Aunt Lucy, but only to find out that she's gone missing into the Amazon rainforest to find some ancient treasure known as the El Dorado. And of course, they team up with Antonio Banderas, and of course, all sort of shenanigans goes down once they go through the deepest, darkest jungles of Peru. This cultural phenomenon being Paddington has been around for a lot longer than the movies have. Like, it started with series, and of course with books being written by the late Michael Bond, and of course there was the amazing little plushies which I have like one in my room. Of course, the franchise has a lot of new life into it with the Paul King 2 films, which star Ben Whishaw and of course Sally Hawkins, who isn't in this movie unfortunately. And both of them did really well box office wise, but critically it was unanimous praise. To the point, I think there was even at one point it was at the #1 best film of all time on Rotten Tomatoes, which was back when it used to mean anything, of course, but still, it's even considered such a highly sought after movie, to the point that even Paul King unfortunately turned down the third film to direct a Wonka movie, which is a brilliant and excellent movie in my opinion. So without Sally Hawkins, who left because she wanted to move on, which is a very suspiciously worded statement, and there's also Paul King, who went on to do Wonka, which is again a great movie. And with the new lead being Douglas Wilson, who's mostly directed music videos throughout his past career, and this is his feature debut, and with much of the cast returning, like Hugh Bonneville and Ben Whishaw as well, and of course Julie Walters as well. So we'll just see how the third outing, this time with Paddington going back to his roots in Peru. This adventurous little sequel with Paddington involved going back to his country is definitely a very enjoyable affair at best. Like I feel like this movie does recapture a lot of the energy and a lot of the fun that the first two movies were a lot more well known on, and the whimsicalness that of course the Michael Bond books were known for, and of course the character and the vibe that Paddington brings out, and of course how the Bond family essentially developed over these series. Like in this third film, they barely talk to each other, not because of some family feud or anything, but they all have their own thing going on. Like the dad is now working in insurance still, and the mom is Mary Brown is still working as an artist. But the two kids are going essentially their separate ways. Like the daughter is about to go off to uni, and the son is essentially an inventor dash slacker, or basically what I could have seen myself in 5 years' time, inventing stuff and probably just sitting on sofa all day. But again, it is very interesting to see how this character development has branched out, not just in this film, how they all evolved from the point A of this film to point Z of this movie, but also from point A of the franchise to point Z at the franchise as well, which is something I do really like to see in a lot of movies, particularly in this one as well. And of course, the movie does shine surprisingly well in the few moments of slapstick comedy it does have, particularly when Paddington realises the boat has essentially been abandoned, so he tries to steer it around, but only backfires onto him, and essentially all shenanigans go through. He had to a point he's basically riding on the wheel, and unfortunately the entire boat capsizes. Thankfully all the family and Paddington has survived, which is something I found very underrated in the other films, like the first one where he's up in the air with an umbrella, or covered himself up with sellotape, which is something I really like, particularly about this little marmalade loving bear, his reluctance to go into more slapsticky territory, like in the opening scene of this film, like when he tries to get his photo taken for a passport, but only to backfire when he tries to shove his face into the camera lens and only damages the little place where you put your coins in, to the point it almost looks like he was looting out of it, and of course he kind of makes it look like an accident, but at this point it kind of all smiles on there. I think you kind of know what to expect from him, but it's you just love the shenanigans of this character. As well, the new characters in this movie, like we have Olivia Colman as the Reverend Mother, who runs the little monastery in the deepest, darkest Peru for retired bears, and of course has something a little bit on her sleeves, and something you might want to question about her, because I don't want to spoil it for you. And we have Antonio Banderas as Hunter Cobert, as basically comes from a long line of hunters and people that are trying to find the gold for El Dorado. And of course has a daughter that just helps about, and of course have to join forces when stuff at third act completely goes down, usually in their wrong direction as well. Although, despite the almighty success of the third film already, even though I definitely enjoyed it, there are definitely some criticisms I have about this movie. Like, yes, I do understand this is the first film from Paddington in 7 years. Like, yes, I know franchise can work. Like, franchises going on a little bit of a hiatus can go a long way for a franchise, as in it will work in a good way for them or work in a bad way for them. But I feel like it could lean into the direction, like, let's say Toy Story, as in, like, oh, we went 10 years or we went 9 years without a Toy Story film, so we can go further on without 8 or 9 years. Like, even though, yes, I feel like the hiatus is somewhat worked against the franchise, just because how long they've pretty much left it. I'm not saying it's the franchise, I'm not saying the third film came too little or too late. I feel like it could have done, like, there should have been some imagination of what could have been if it went on a little bit longer. Like, if the hiatus went longer, and if it were to go on, and if it were to work against it as well. Like the film is definitely brilliant, but it kind of begs the question, like, if we're going to get a fourth film, like, is it going to come, like, right away, even though the 1 and 2 took place, like, 3 years apart from each other? Like, it took essentially twice as long to make this film. Definitely like the first 2 films. The movie does look visually really good. Not just of the mise-en-scène and the film's like set decoration and how it used that for its visual language, but also when they go into Peru, and not just again the mise-en-scène of the scene, but also how very oddly colourful a lot of the sets are. Particularly in the Amazon, and how gorgeous the rainforest looked throughout the entirety of this movie. And of course, when they go into a town like in Peru, which is, although very brief, it does appeal to your eye very strongly. And of course, the movie cinematography definitely shines very brightly in these sequences, particularly when they're in like the rainforest, which is again most of the movie, and particularly the wide shots where they look out throughout the tops of the trees in the rainforest as well. And again, like I said, like earlier, the character development and their own personal story arcs are also really good in this movie, like, in my opinion. The movie does have some very strong performances of Olivia Colman, Tony Banderas, and Emily Mutimer, and Hugh Bonneville, as well as the brilliant voice work, as usual, of Ben Whishaw. The direction is also pretty good, and so is the writing, which does have some incredibly clever jokes, even though not to the better payoff as the other 2 films, but still you'll definitely get some couple of good laughs out of here. But I feel like the movie's hiatus definitely somewhat worked against it. Even though I feel like it's not just a case that the audience has moved on with it, but it's becoming a case that the audience are starting to anticipate that it's going to take a very long time for the next installment to turn up again. Even though this is definitely a very warm and very likable and very fuzzy film, particularly like the Marmalade Loving Bear. Even though this is a pretty strong a contender as well for the franchise, but it's a very good installment, but definitely doesn't have that much of a very shine bright to it like the first 2 films. So for Paddington in Peru, I am feeling an 8 out of 10 on this one. So, what do you think of Paddington in Peru? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Letterboxd. And this is Elijah Wells, and bye.